Okay, my name is Barton Morse, and I'll be teaching fruit tree pruning. And if you have any questions, you can ask them at any time. I'm in no hurry or anything. The overall goal of fruit tree pruning is to have your fruit tree sort of look like a big umbrella. You want it to come down and with all the fruit hanging out and on the edges. Most of the trees that I prune, I keep them between 6 and 8 feet tall, because then it makes it real simple to pick the fruit off of them and all that. A lot of trees will just go straight up and be 60 feet tall, and they're just too tall for most ladders and all that. And if you have a pear tree that's like that tall, you can actually take the center out of it and lower it down to a reasonable height. There's about 10 different reasons or so to prune a tree. If you've got, oh, go ahead.
I have a question on some of your standard trees that get to be 40, 60 feet tall.
Okay.
You can actually prune those, keep them down to a level that's within, like the reach of a ladder and stuff.
Yeah, yes, you can. If it's if your first branch is like 10 feet above the ground, it's a little more difficult to do that. But if you've got lower branches down to 6, 8 feet, and then branches above that, you can just take a lot of those branches off and just and then the next year it should send out new shoots lower and just keep lowering the tree until you get it to a reasonable height. So. Anyway, usually there's rubbing branches. You want to take all those out because you can see where they damage each other. Take those out or one side off. And then some have bad angles. The angles, let's see, I have examples of bad angles. Here's one that's a three-way. You want to take that center one out because the angles are, one of them is going to tear off. And so having them all together like that is not a good idea. Here's an example of what happened this winter. This winter, you'll probably see a lot of damage from deer and the snow. It just got in there, and the deer grab them and tear them and all that. So you're going to have to take all those out and clean those up. There'll be a lot of there'll be dead branches and weak branches, branches that are too close, and then there'll be these suckers that go straight up. And those aren't necessarily bad, depends on their angle. If they or most of them are like this, but if you see one that goes out like this, you might want to save that one for fruit production later. They usually don't produce fruit the first year, but the second year they will. Here's some examples of, this is fruit spurs here. You can see they're kind of rounded and all that, even up here. This here is an example of a tree that's just the first year growth, and it won't have any fruit on this, except for apricots. Apricots sometimes will do it all the way up. But then the next year, when you snip this off and these side branches grow out, then they'll have fruit on those. This is a clematis vine, and even though they look dead like this, if you clip them and you see a little bit of green in there, then they're alive, and you can leave those. And it makes it, when you open these trees up, you take the branches that are too thick in there, and you open them up, so it makes it easier to spray for bugs and things like that too. Or even if you use the oil spray, dormant oil or a summer oil, then you can get in there. Also for picking fruit and all that. Oh yes, you're going to need a pair of sunglasses because you're going to be looking up a lot. So, and you want to be able to see the branch without going blind. And also you want to wear protective clothing, long sleeves, gloves. Last year I was pruning in shorts, and I got a little cut on the back of my leg, turned into blood poisoning, and so you want to protect yourself. It was just a dull branch from an apple tree, but it was all dirty and dusty, and it got it infected. So wear heavy protective clothing. And then I have pants that I've kind of custom made so I can carry my tools in here on the side. And then my coat also is specially designed for carrying tools. And I usually wear this because it's
don't mess up my mic now.
What's that?
Don't mess up my mic.
Okay. The tool, I put it so that you can put all your tools right in the front here. So here, there's the little one. It is. Usually you put the little one right over here, and I can get most of the tools that I need, depending on what project I'm doing. And surprisingly, 90% of the pruning I do is with this little guy, because it's little but it's real powerful, and it can get most of the branches. And if they're too big, then I'll whip out the saw, and we'll be able to get that taken care of. That'll take care of a pretty large branch, about that big, if you need to. And if you get into some heavy duty stuff, then you can use these. These are real good. These are all soft wood or live wood saws. And if they get dull, I always have these files, sharpen them up. And what happens on these is they don't necessarily get dull on the cutting part here. They get dull on the gripping part. And that gripping part is really the most important part. It just kind of holds it, and then you can just whack it off. I usually prune February till June, and just as soon as the snow goes away. This year it's going to be late. But the maples and the birches are the exception. You prune those in November, because they have sap that will come out in February. Good sap. Grapes, usually you want to have a scaffolding in grapes. It'll come out like this. Then it'll have these long shoots on them. You want to cut all those long shoots off to about 3 buds, and then spaced about 18 inches to 2 feet. Those in there, and then clip all those little ones off. Oh yeah, the production of the fruit on an apple tree, you may have like 100 apples on an unpruned tree, but only about 50 pounds of fruit. If you prune it, you'll have 50 apples, but maybe 150 pounds of fruit. So that's one of the other reasons you want to prune. And when you're cutting,
don't trees often, like the year after you've pruned them, significantly not produce as well?
no, usually once you prune them, if you can get production that first year, and the next year the production should still be good. A lot of trees, if you don't prune them, they produce 1 year and then not the next. So if you keep them well pruned and fertilized, they should produce every year. And when you're cutting, you want to cut right there above the node, like this, not up here below the node, because this part here will die back to that node. And so it's always best to cut it flush. Then if you're cutting a big branch off, you want to cut it flush up against there, not out here, and that will heal over real nice, especially the bigger ones. I didn't have as many samples this year because I couldn't get to the trees, but I brought some apple and some plum in. I couldn't get to the pear trees, so.
If you have trees that haven't been pruned in who knows how many years, how much of the tree can you safely prune without doing too much damage?
Up to 75%.
Wow.
You can really whack them, but you want to leave you just go up to the first bunch of branches, and anything above that you can take off. 50% is fine. I've done the tree where the first set of branches is like here, and we just took and cut the tree below that, so it's just a stump. And you got a 50-50 chance. It'll either die or it'll produce a lush growth, new growth. And that's about it. Every other tree I've done has died, and every other tree has been flushed. So that's a risk you'll have to take.
So apple trees, it seems like our trees produce every other year. Is that because they're not?
Okay, that's because they need to be fertilized and pruned and watered good.
Oh, so it's not the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it's the nature of an unpruned, uncared for tree.
Oh, okay. Okay, so.
But you can avoid that by pruning it pretty good. Although I've got a Whitney crab that'll sometimes do that. It'll just say, well, even though you prune me, I'm still not going to do anything this year. So,
Okay, thanks.
but it'll still produce some here and there.
When you're pruning your apple tree, if you have one that has a crown, say 20-foot circumference, you know what I'm saying, up here, it's already too high. Do
Okay.
you have to just drop it all down, or can you just kind of bring the whole circumference down?
Well, you can go up to the first branch and bring it, anything above that you can cut off. But if it's really already too tall, like 20 feet up or something, you might consider just getting a new tree and planting it nearby, and then, wait a couple of years until that starts producing and cut the old one down. Because some of these old trees out here are so old and so big, I mean, they cost hundreds of dollars to prune them, and the fruit, is in.
Yeah, these are ones that her grandparents planted in the early 1900s.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not
yeah,
going to get cut down.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, if you're trying to save them, just cut out as many as you can from the top,
Yeah.
and use the tallest ladder you've got, and then it'll produce better and be easier to get at.
So you can take off up to, per se, 4-inch off the top.
Yeah, you can take. Well, I mean, if it's up, say it's up about this tall, and then it's another 20 feet above that,
Yeah.
you can take it down 20 feet down to those first sets. If you take too much off, you're going to not have any fruit, but it'll bring it down. And then if it starts to produce lower branches, save those and just cut them higher. Other ones off.
So do you cut them when you're cutting the bigger branches, do you cut them so that water isn't available to get into them, or do you?
Yeah,
cut
well,
them
usually you don't want to cut them
angles?
off like this. You
Right.
want to cut them off like this.
That's what I was.
And then cut them as flush as you can to the trunk, and that way they'll heal over and seal that up. But if you've got one in the middle, that one it's going to be difficult to seal that off because.
So do you use something ever?
Yeah,
or
I
do you,
probably would use something on that one, some of that black tar or something. Usually you don't have to do that, but in a case where it's like a big branch right in the middle and that's the one that has to come out and there's
we
a
have
big
pear
dip.
trees that are so tall.
Oh yeah, that would be the thing that would do is seal that. Because you don't want that water getting in there rotting. I've had that happen. They rot and then you can't save it.
In your example of that 20-foot canopy, basically that you're wanting to bring down, would you be cutting the leader as well as the branches?
Yeah. You don't want to cut it, right across flush. You want to go all the way down and cut it out completely, and then the same with each one. Have them flush against it and where it's curved down, and try to lower the whole tree down. And, if you take a tree that's like this and it's got all these branches sticking up and you cut them all off at the top, next you're going to have twice as many and it's going to be even worse. So.
Talk about fertilizer. We have 1 gallon dairy. What about its waste and maybe spent milk? Can that be called fertilizer?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I sometimes will take a crowbar, one of these big long ones, and drive it into the ground, make a little circle, make a hole about that deep, and then go about every 18 inches all around the drip line, and then you just take a bag of that chicken manure and just fill all those holes in there. That does wonders. It makes them grow fast.
Okay.
And you should have, for new growth on a tree, it should be at least 3 feet to 8 feet of new growth. If you're only getting growth that's like this, then there's something wrong. You need to fertilize it more or break up the soil or something.
Can you overdo it?
I don't think you can overdo it with chicken manure at all.
About cow manure and straw.
No. Watch out for mice. Mice will move into the straw and start chewing the tree.
We have plenty of cats.
Okay, good. If you find a tree that's real loose, check the bark, see if it has been chewed around. If it has been chewed around by mice, it's dead. And even though it'll live for 1 more year, the next year it's gone. So you might as well replace it. Okay.
Yeah, I have trees and they seem to be prone to getting a lot of suckers and water sprouts. Is there any way you can prune 1 year to sort of suppress the growth of those suckers and water sprouts the following year?
The only thing you can do is prune those off, and then during the summer, just kind of break all those little suckers as they start to form up before they turn to wood. That'll cut back on your sucker growth a lot.
At what point should you start pruning young trees?
Right away. As soon as you get them, you want to start training them, because the sooner you can get at it, the sooner you can correct problems like this or bad angles and all that. You want to have all the angles 45 degrees if you can. They're usually not that perfect, but just a little bit up from that. And then, you can just do this little one here, then snip, 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 and that saves you a bunch. But if you wait 5 or 10 years, then you've got big branches to deal with, or like this.
See, I bought a pear tree that was growing very, all the branches are pretty vertical,
Okay.
15-degree angles, and
Yeah.
I don't want to cut them all off because it won't have any left.
Okay.
And so, is there a way to get them to like spread out?
You can get these spreader sticks and put between them. Or another thing you can do is, if you find a nice big one that's like this, you can tie a string on the end of it and then put a heavy weight, and it'll just kind of hold it down until it hardens up in the fall. And then you can take it off and it should stay there. That'd be one way. Yeah, pears are tricky. They just want to go straight up. So.
Is there any difference in grooming a yellow plum tree versus an apple tree? Do you have to treat them any differently?
They're pretty close to the same. Apricot and peaches are quite radically different. On apricots, you take off 75% of the branches every year, because they tend to go like this, and lots of them. So you've got to thin them out and then cut them, so that you only have a scaffolding of those. And mostly they will produce fruit all the way to the tips. So wherever you want fruit, you just snip it there, and then all the way back. I've seen apricot trees that just row after row of apricot flowers and buds, just in a beautiful formation like that. And they were growing 18 feet a year, just astonishing. And so I just whack them here, and then they get lots of apricots. So.
What about cherries? Can you tell us about
Cherries are a little different. They usually come out, this isn't a cherry, but I'll give you an example. You want to cut those so that they are, they're going to have two buds coming out here. They'll have one here and one here. You want to cut the center one out. Just cut it right off like that, and then you'll have your other bud there. And then you clip off the tips of those, and then they'll do it again, and just keep it pruned that way. Here's an example of a bad branch. You can see that it's the wrong angle, it's broken, and so that should be cleaned off and just kind of pruned up a bit. And then that part there will heal over and form a nice covering on that one. Let's see. Do that with the one here. And pass that one around there. This one here, you cut it off flush, and that will heal over real nice.
You mentioned how you could cut a fruit tree and have a 50% chance of it surviving if you cut it down to...
Oh, yeah, that's if you got a big stump and it goes up like this and then it starts to branch out. If you cut it right here, you have 50-50 chance of it surviving.
Would that hold for a cherry tree also, very old?
Yes, I believe so. I've seen cherries come back from that too.
Do you have to seal the top with something to keep it?
They don't recommend sealing anymore. Sealing used to be a big thing. They used to, with the black tar, but they said, no, it's seal just fine without sealing it. Only if you've got like a dip, maybe I would seal it just to keep the water up. The water is what rots it. So if the cuts are at an angle and like that, they're going to just heal over.
Would you prune a cherry tree as thin as you would an apple tree? So for circulation. And
yeah, you want to keep it
really
so
thin
that
it out?
Thin it out, because you don't want. If you go in there now and you can't reach or get in there, how are you going to get in when it has twice as many branches that you didn't put out? So you're going to have to, like if you got them like this, and there's a branch here, just take that center one out, and then I usually go around and find the very biggest branches first, because if they've got a lot of little stuff, you don't want to prune it and then end up cutting it off. So you get the big branch, and you just saw that out or cut it out. If it's really big, I use a chainsaw on those. But 8 inches or smaller, and I can use any one of these things. This will go through a pretty good amount. Then if you want, you can use something like this, but I try not to use that too often. For cutting up. Oh, and be sure to wear gloves too, because you don't want to get yourself cut or injured or anything like that.
I have a plum tree that goes like this, and the branches go like this.
Okay.
The main trunk died right there.
Oh,
And
it died.
these guys over here are going all over like that.
Okay.
So how do I prune this?
Well, that dead thing in the center.
The central one died right there, and then
Okay.
the branches go here like that.
Well, what you want to do is first of all cut that dead thing out, get rid of it. So you
Cut
have
the
room.
tree.
Yeah,
No, not the tree.
not the tree,
No.
just the dead branch.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Is the
just
dead
down, just cut it down to where there's live growth, and then cut that off. And then each branch you want to go around each one and cut it to a reasonable length.
This one's going like this. Do I cut the tips off?
You can cut the tips off. It depends on how far out it is. If it's like way out, like 10 or 20 feet, you
It's
might want to cut
it's
it back.
going like maybe 10 feet.
10 feet. Okay, then I'll cut it back to like 6 feet.
Oh,
And then you have plenty of room for fruit, but it wouldn't be too heavy and break off or anything like that. Make sure the angle's, if the angle's 45, then that's fine. If it's, a bad angle or something, then you want to.
Yeah, it's kind of angle like this.
Oh, okay, that's a perfect angle, so you just want to shorten it up a little bit.
Okay.
And you don't want to have real long, thin branches at the end. If they're real thin or weak, just turn it back to where they get a little bit stouter.
But
So
the ones growing vertical there, I cut them off, right?
well, yeah, if they're going straight out, but if they're growing out, or if you want to save one, like I said, you could tie a string on the end of one and get it curled down, and then it would be fine to save. I had one tree that didn't have anything but suckers on it, and it had great fruit, but no place to grow. So we took the suckers, cut them in half, and then let those grow out, and then we saved some of those, and then it had lots of fruit on it. So suckers do produce, it's just that they're sometimes too close and too many.
I have an older tree that's been pruned heavily in the past, but not recently.
Okay.
But it's a Y fork tree. At what point do you have to worry about it being so heavy on the sides that it's going to split the tree?
Well, that's kind of, usually it's best never to have those, but if you've got it, you may have to just decide which side you want to save, and then you just cut one of them off, cut it off flush. And if you've got one that's, just like this, and then just in poor shape, then maybe you just cut that one off and kind of train this side. That's usually the best way to save those.
I have new plum trees that have really low branches.
Okay.
Should I get rid of
You
them?
can take them off if they're in your way, but they'll produce fruit down there too. The only ones you want to cut out of the way are the ones that are down low and kind of short to the tree, because those are going to get shaded out, so you can take those off. If you want them to grow out like that, and if they're low, that's fine.
I have a Evans Bolly cherry that's grafted onto Evans Bolly rootstock.
Okay.
And the nursery told me that that's common because it's easier to mass produce that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they do that. They'll put a rootstock on, and then they'll put the tree on that. I don't like to get grafted trees too much, because if that breaks off, then you're stuck with the rootstock, which is usually not a very good cherry.
Right. But then since it's grafted on, is it only for mass production purposes, not for health purposes for the tree?
Right. Yeah. It's for dwarfing it. It's for rootstock being hardy and stuff like that.
But I mean, it's the same rootstock.
Oh, right. Yeah. I think it's for dwarfing in that case.
Huh.
Because that's what they do. They'll graft them and then.
Okay, then if it's the same rootstock, then if I grow the seeds from the cherry, then would it be the same true tree?
It wouldn't come true for the seeds. Seeds are always different.
Even though it's the same rootstock?
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of like dahlias. The seeds are never true to the rootstock. So Yeah, on trees, it's and you don't want to, when you're pruning, you don't want to cut it below that gap either, then you're going to get whatever the rootstock is. And if it's the same, it'll just get much, much bigger. So.
Huh.
We had put a small orchard, and then our neighbor's cows decided good grazing there and hammered it.
Oh yeah.
It's got one tree that's it's only 6 years old, the whole orchard.
Okay.
It has a branch out here.
Okay.
Should I whack it like an old tree and hope for the best?
You know, in that case, maybe. I had a tree that I just put in, it was about this tall, and the deer came in and just scraped all the bark off about here. So I just cut it all the way off and looked, and there was 2 or 3 buds below that, so I'm hoping that those buds will come up. It's a better chance for a young tree to come back than an old.
So maybe whack it below that one branch.
See if there's any buds below that. If there's any buds at all, then yeah, you can cut it right off, and it should come back. And it should try to make up time, so it'll be 6 or 8 foot of growth.
Okay.
And you want to wrap them too, or put a fence around them to keep them protected from the deer next go around.
Much better fence for this neighbor's cattle now.
Oh yeah, cattle are tough on things, so are deer.
This is not related to pruning, but is there like a general fertilizer, like a 10-10-10 for the fruit trees?
Well, so far from what I found, the chicken manure, the pelletized chicken manure is the best.
Pelletized chicken.
Yeah, you won't get it, you won't burn it, and you put a lot of it on, and it's great for pouring down those holes. And it's a little smelly, but you know, if you've got 5 or 6 trees, just use it all up and get rid of it. Then you know, it'll be fine.
So when you put it on, do you put it close to the trunk? Or
you put it in the drip line, wherever the drip line is. You can either pour it around the drip line, or you can punch holes in to get it there quicker and pour it in those holes. Either way works. And if you've got thick grass, you might want to do the punch method because the grass. Cooper's has it.
All right.
Hey.
So I have 6 apple trees. I think like all but 2 of them are different varieties.
Okay.
And I'm still not. I think they're 9 years old now.
Okay.
I haven't gotten a single apple.
No fruit, no apple. Okay. How tall are they? Oh, okay. They're not
12 or 15 feet.
You want to check the soil
fence-hunted.
and see if the pH is off or if it's lacking fertilizer. It's usually lacking fertilizer or lacking water. They take quite a bit. They take about 5 gallons of water a day. So you might check that and check the fertility. Check some other things around to see how they're growing. If you've got some sick-looking grass or weak other plants, it's probably fertilizer.
So I have like an apricot right there that's produced really well, and some cherries close by that. Everything else is producing well. I mean, it could be that the topography has made the drip irrigation not water those as much. Possibly,
it's possible, yeah. If you've got a situation where the water kind of sheds off of it, you might want to put a ditch in or something to kind of hold the water there. And check down in the soil itself, see what you've got down there. Is it rocks? Is it sand? Is it clay? If it's clay and hardpan clay, then you might have to dig it out or dig. Somehow or other, you've got to get that out of there and enrich the soil. So you might have to take it back or something. I don't know. If you got that clay, that's a tough one. And it can, if you've got the clay hardpan, what it'll do, it'll go down like this, and then it'll grow up like this, and then the tree just is poor, doesn't grow well, doesn't produce. So first thing I'd do is dig down as a trench and see if you've got a hardpan down there, clay hardpan. If you do, then that's your problem. And if you don't, if it's...
yeah, I don't think I do, because I've dug everywhere, and our clay doesn't start till about 3 feet down.
Okay. Yeah, it should be okay then. There's nothing. yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, I've seen a pear tree like that. We just couldn't get it to grow, and we put fertilizer on it, and dug down, and watered it, and sometimes they just don't take for some reason.
But all of your apples, that's pretty.
But you said how much growth per year would you expect?
About 3 to 6 feet at least.
Yeah, they're not doing that.
And if they're not doing that, then there's something wrong with the soil.
You don't think it's but or the water?
Well, maybe the water. Some of the water's alkaline around here, but usually not that. Usually it's the soil.
Or maybe just not enough water.
Or just not enough water. Yeah, I would dig down there, see if the soil is super dry or super clay or closer clay maybe, and then that's probably the problem.
But you don't think, I mean, because they flower, so it's not like a problem with pollination not happening or something.
Yeah, no, it's usually not a pollination problem. And if you got 6 trees, if you watch, you can watch to see if bees come around or some kind of bee, either bumblebee, mason bee, or regular, any kind of bee. And if you don't see some, then it's possible that could be a problem. You could put in a beehive. Then I know I put in a beehive one year, and my production tripled.
Oh, really?
So I mean, it just really makes a big difference. But I can't keep bees because I'm in too small a neighborhood, and they swarm, and the neighbors were freaked out. So. Well, check in the mason bees for pollination. They don't sting, and they're a good pollinizer. So.
Okay.
Is magnesium important?
Yes, magnesium is very important. So is calcium. And there again, soil test is pretty important. I would dig down and do a soil test. And that will tell you if your pH is way out of whack. If your pH is way out of whack, then things will grow very, very poorly. And a lot of times the pH on things can be very high. If you've got like an 8.5 or something.
That's mine.
Okay, then you're going to need to fix that. Put some sulfur on, lower that about a point or two.
I've added elemental sulfur.
Yeah, that takes about a year to 2 or 3 years for it to break down enough to change it. But just keep adding it. The coffee grounds are real good for it. Or some peat moss would be good. Peat moss is usually about 5.5, and it'll lower the pH.
But the thing about that is that the water is that pH as well.
Yeah, there's not much you can do about the water unless you filter it, and that would be pretty expensive. So. And most of the water is alkaline around here. So adding sulfur is your cheapest, best method for lowering the pH. And just probably adding it every year so that the first year starts to break down, the second year, and then the first year stuff. So that's what usually is wrong with my garden. It's sulfur. And then also put in gypsum.
So then adding Epsom salts might be good because it provides magnesium as well as sulfur.
Yes. It doesn't lower the pH, though, I don't think, on the sulfur. Okay. I've even heard of people using vinegar water, just a dilute solution.
Sometimes in the books it says, when your tree is being, about mid-height or something, you talk about either keeping a central leader or cutting out the leader to.
Yeah, that's kind of two different thoughts of pruning. There's the central leader people, and then there's the cut out the central leader. I kind of do the cut out the central leader thought, because then it's all open in the inside, and you can get the fruit and spray it and stuff like that. So that's the best way to go.
So since you mentioned spraying, when does that happen? Right when it starts budding?
Well, on apple trees, you spray them as soon as it warms up to about 50, 60 degrees with the dormant oil. And that'll smother a lot of the bugs that are on the tree. And then the next time you would spray was right after the blossoms fall off. Oh. And what happens is the apple itself is open like this. And the worms just basically crawl in. And then 2 weeks later, it closes up and the worm is inside. So then it just chews its way out, and that's where you get the apple.
So right after
all the blossoms have fallen off, and spray it every week until the apples close up.
Oh, what about that apricot tree?
Apricot usually doesn't have too many bugs. They are.
Oh, so you don't really need.
You don't really need to spray them. Same with plums.
Oh. Okay.
Pears get a little bug of some kind, but the dormant oil should take care of those.
Thank you.
So you spray before the bud and after the
yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. Yeah, before the bud and after the blossom falls. Yes.
I can't hear your question on here.
Oh.
Their questions. Can you repeat their questions when they?
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, sure.
If you have chickens and you use a substrate mix of pine shavings and straw in the coop and you're cleaning that out because it gets loaded with chicken manure, can you take that and spread it under the fruit trees?
Yes, you can spread that manure all over under the trees, and that'll be fine. And I've spread it out. I've had it as thick as like 2 to 4 inches, and it burned all the grass, but the tree was fine.
I have some young Asian pear.
Okay.
About this big.
Okay.
And all the branches are going like this.
Oh yeah, they do the same thing.
How do I feed those?
First of all, you want to cut the center out of the tree to keep it from doing more straight outs. And then if you have any long branches that's longer, then you can tie string to the end of them and put a weight on that, so it'll kind of bend the tree down. Not enough to break it off, but enough to just bend it. And then they will, after about September, they'll just stay that way. They kind of cure or harden up.
I do that now in the spring.
Yeah, you'll do that in the spring. And you can do it, let's see, during the summer as they're growing too. If you get a nice big branch that goes out, then go ahead and tie string to it, and with a weight, and then curl it down.
Okay. But I keep the main trunk so that I can take them like that?
Yeah, just up to the point where you want it. If you want the main trunk to be 6, 8, or 10 feet tall, then just whack it right there. And then everything else you want to have it curl down.
About, you haven't mentioned anything about nut trees yet. We have an
okay.
And hazelnuts.
Hazelnuts, okay. Well, I don't know too much about those. I have a hazelnut tree.
Okay.
It's basically the same. You want to prune it so it's convenient for you. There's not any particular, I've noticed mine is just kind of setting out branches this way and that way. You just thin it out a little bit. Yeah, if you've got the corkscrew one, then you just have to pick the ones you want to save. And if you got some that are in the way, just prune those out. I think as far as it's similar, just any crossing branches or dead or broken branches, things like that.
How about choke cherries?
Oh, just cut them all the way to the ground. They'll come back in 3 years, stronger than ever.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, on choke cherries, I would just pick height you want and then cut out everything else, that's within 3 feet of it, and just cut them right to the ground, and just save the ones you want to save.
Side branches and stuff?
Side branches, I don't know, I really haven't paid much attention to them because they're just they're everywhere and they're a nuisance, so.
They're getting paid.
Yeah, that'll take care of them. Well, I want to thank everybody. If you want to stick around and ask more questions, that's fine, but you can take a card and email me or call me or whatever, and I'll answer any other questions or stay as long as you like.
What do you use to spray your apple trees?
I actually never get around to it. I usually don't spray them with anything, but if I do, it's maybe a summer oil or something. It's called summer oil. You can spray it as a dormant oil or in the summer, and it smothers the bugs and all that. But I don't get a whole lot of bugs in my apples, so. Super organic. Yeah, okay.
So I have an old tree that is in the house we moved in, or in the backyard, but it basically grows. It has this low branch that goes out here, and then it goes up, and it hadn't been pruned in several years, so we just kind of cut it all back in general. But if we cut that off, then the whole tree's gone. So we don't really want to do that. But is there any way you can sort of help counterbalance?
Yeah, you can just, that I've seen that before where it goes way up and then it comes up. Just kind of let some branches grow back this way a bit, so that it's kind of balanced a little better. And, maybe loop it around this way or something. just don't let it go any farther out that way. So.
Yeah, okay.
Just was wondering, on grapes, we have newly planted grapes.
Okay, grapes.
How and when and how would you prune those?
Okay, how big are they now?
Just planted last year.
Okay, so they're you know, like that. Well, there's not too much you do. You're mainly looking to get some. You want to have scaffolding of them. They come up and they go out this way, and then come up again and go out that way. Once you've got that, then you can start tying those to the fence or whatever you've got for support. And then as they send out secondary buds that grow 10 feet, that's when you want to cut those back to about three buds or about that long. And they'll produce like crazy. I got 40 pounds of grapes last year from one grape box. So.
40
box.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.